between. And I'm really hoping that with our work here at 214 Alpha, we can really fill that gap.
Yeah, well, so I mean, my background, I had done political advocacy since the 80s as a skateboarder. I wanted to find a safe and legal place for kids to skate so they weren't treated like criminals, right? But what I
Yeah.
found was that I wanted to look at the successful projects, those who had successfully advocated on behalf of their community. And I found that there were some certain common characteristics. One of them is it ends up being something like a mom. I would call them the moms. They didn't know, they weren't always moms. They weren't always female, but they were like the moms of the community, the place for the social hub for the kids to come, the misfit kids, right? And they had actually successfully navigated the labyrinth of how to allocate land for the community, through a city council. And there were a few things that they needed, I had actually I'd launched and run a 501c3. This is in 2001 through 2000. Oh, I don't know, 2002 through 2008, had run a nonprofit that ended up having 1,700 members that would basically teach best practices for how to do it. In fact, the nonprofit published a book, two editions of it, with the Tony Hawk Foundation and the assistance of the skateboard industry, the International Association of Skateboard Companies, and we had collaborated in dramatically decreasing the time necessary to get public facilities simply by distributing best practices. And some of those best practices had shared the things that you need to be a successful advocacy. So, let's say that you're a single person within a community of 10,000, you might have an idea, but in order to make that idea real, you're going to need a few things. One's a team, and you're going to need to have, there's just a few things. So that was my experience coming into this, is that, somebody might have an idea on how they'd like to improve their community or establish a community or sustain a community. And there are a few things that are necessary. And having navigated that, I begin to realize, okay, well, this is the things that work. These are the things that don't work. And in the years since I left Skaters for Public Skate Parks, that would be in 2008, I spent 2 years on the board of the Tony Hawk Foundation. I got to see how a nonprofit really functions, a high functioning one. And also, in the years after that, I thought a lot about, man, if I could do it differently, if I could go back and do it differently, knowing what I have now, right? And so that experience really deeply informed, our entry into software. My orientation is, create a small community and make it functional and extrapolate large. Go start small, get big. But it doesn't really start small and go macro. It ends up going small and overlapping loops, right? So it's community overlapping with communities in it's almost like a overlapping thing.
I actually kind of like really get your point here. I actually fully agree, because I feel when you try to go at macro, like you can't, of course, control all of the elements which go into the process, and then the process gets like much less than efficient. Maybe even some negative cycles gets created, and in the end, basically the whole idea maybe falls apart, not because the idea was bad, but because the execution has become that challenging, that
Right.
it's almost impossible to like keep it afloat. Like I always feel that if it doesn't need to be necessarily start small, start something which can be like maintained with the best practices, like to apply all of the values and everything that's been learned as an experience. And then when you have a solid foundation, you can build on it, and it won't just crash.
Yeah. Well, we had this a similar breakthrough when we were doing the skateboard advocacy, is that, shame on us for thinking that what a community needed was a skate park. Actually, a skateboard park is an anomaly. Skateboarders, most of them just enjoy skating down the stairs, which is actually just one small little thing, right? And then, a lot of us old guys are thinking skate park, like, 10,000 square feet or 30,000 square feet or whatever. And so what we ended up doing is saying, okay, well, the city of, Portland or San Jose or whatever needs a skate park. What we ended up doing is inherently centralized, right? If you think about it, because most of the kids we were trying to address were about 9 to 14 years old, and they didn't need a single monolithic solution for a city. What they needed was something for their neighborhood.